What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about some upcoming Batman games that could potentially work and could potentially be things that WB is thinking about. So I thought, you know what? It's a weekend video. It's normally some of these videos I do like longer discussions on. I guess depending on when you watch them, though, it might not be on the weekend. But, we've heard from them that Batman is a big pillar, right? This is kind of where all this stems from. We know that Batman and the Batman games, we're talking about WB games, not even just WB in general, Batman is one of the four. Now, DC is also kind of one of the four, but they specifically say Batman. So, while I do want Superman, I'm very much looking forward. There might be very few people looking forward to it more than me, Wonder Woman, okay? So I want these games. I want games that are not just Batman. And I actually think just doing Batman games is actually kind of the wrong move. I think it's smart in the short term because it's reliable. He always is going to draw people in. There's a reason why Batman's been around for so long, and even movies specifically, right, has had so many iterations. It's a thing that does work. Like, I absolutely will give them that. I do think Batman games, especially done well, will sell. I actually think Batman games not done well will probably sell as well. And Suicide Squad, I don't know if you consider that a Batman game. He's in it, but he's not playable. Gotham Knights did pretty good. Batman's also not playable there either, right? So it's like, if they do a good Batman game, or 10 of them, I think they will be actually quite okay. I would just like to see that, creativity flow that it seems like they're not really going to be given the chance to, okay? With all that done, all that rambling, I do want to talk about a couple different ideas of what they could actually do. So the first one, I do want to kind of rehash an old topic, is Arkham Asylum remake. Okay, we'll go through this fast because I've already done the video specifically on this. This is possible, and it's not because of Vera Dark who did the rumor in the first place. I think it's possible just because, right? And I actually did a video on it a year and a half ago talking about the possibility. It's an older game. It's a game that sold extremely well. It started this whole freaking thing. It's an extremely good game. It's safe, right? We're in the age of remakes. That's like 5 reasons right there why I actually think it makes a lot of sense. Again, I don't know. Actually, I will say this. Of all the things we're going to talk about, and even other superhero games, this would be at the bottom of my list because ultimately Arkham Asylum is still playable. It's made the jump to console generations. It's not stuck, let's say, on say PS3 and 360. It's still around. You even had the Return to Arkham. It's a remaster. It's not a remake. And at the same time, when you remake a game, you're potentially flipping the coin if they massively do a whole thing to it, overhaul it, right? And I don't really think we want them to do that with Arkham Asylum. But again, this is not necessarily so much what we want. It's more of what we think they would do, and those two things can cross over, right? And you would hope they actually do, but generally, or sometimes, especially with WB, it doesn't always happen. So I do want to make that clear. Like, of all these ideas, even like I said earlier, like, I want other superhero games, but sometimes it's not really about what I want. It's about what they will ultimately do. So I do think Arkham Asylum, I honestly believe it's going to happen at some point. 15 years old, it's definitely old enough that they could justify it. It's just, okay, is this like the first game of like this massive push, right? I want to kind of go off the rails a little bit and say, okay, well, like, could they actually do like a Gotham Knights 2? Now, we won't spend much time on this one either because it's like, all right, well, Batman, they've already kind of established Batman in that universe, and I think it would have made, and I think a lot of us kind of said this, it made more sense for Gotham Knights to be in the Arkhamverse and then for Suicide Squad not to be, right? And I think that actually would have worked out potentially better because I think Batman is actually very good in what he is in Gotham Knights. It's just, it's not necessarily a Batman game. But, if you're talking about DC and you're talking about these future superhero games that they could be doing, could Gotham Knights 2 work and kind of satisfy the condition of Batman? And the answer is, like, maybe. And honestly, like, you could throw in Teen Titans. Like, if there's any kind of link to Batman, I guess that's what I'm trying to do for, like, this portion of the video. Any kind of link. So, like, a Robin adjacent type thing. Like, if you had that happen, would that satisfy, like, that Batman itch? And would that get, like, a green light from WB? It's possible, right? So I kind of want to throw those in almost as, like, honorable mentions. Arkham Asylum, I think, is a big possibility, but one that I don't necessarily want. And then I will say this in terms of like, I think an obvious one and one that I think would work really well and one that I think people would actually get behind is just another Arkham game, much like we just got with the VR one, and you do it for consoles. Now I'm kind of past the point of like taking away from Arkham Shadows because, while I haven't played it, I heavily respect it. I've seen so many people talk about how much they loved it and how good of a game it is. So I don't really want to take away from it and say, oh, it shouldn't have existed. It shouldn't be on VR. It should only be on consoles. It is what it is. If it gives them confidence to make more Arkham games in between other ones, I say go for it. Like that's honestly kind of where I'm at because, well, I kind of just said it. If this gives them the confidence to make another game in between Origins, let's say this game, Shadows, and then Arkham Asylum, right before Arkham Asylum, like the thing is, you have so much history there, and you almost have an infinite amount of time in between Origins and Asylum, and it doesn't really even seem like you do. Does that make sense? You have so many villains when you get to Asylum, because Asylum really is just a rogues gallery of just attack after attack, and I think it's done beautifully well. I think the pacing of Asylum is so good, hence why it's my favorite Arkham game. But they do it so well, and it establishes so much in a relatively quick game, right? They establish that there's so much history there, so they really do have like unlimited time because like Batman never really, you know what I mean? He never stops fighting. It's like technically constantly. So you could literally do 10 games within the same year and have literal 10 Arkham games right there. And it could be a year before Arkham. You could have Joker in it because like Joker's met with Batman multiple times by Asylum. Killer Croc, like everybody, literally everybody has already met him by that point, right? He's got history with so many people. So I don't know. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think that's the obvious one. I really do like that. It lets you kind of, well, here's what it does, okay? It lets you kind of go crazy because like you do have the most unlimited potential. However, you're still kind of constrained just enough so that these people don't mess it up. Especially if you don't have confidence in these people, right? If you think, oh, okay, I don't trust X studio, with the thing. Well, here's the thing. You do have, what I mean? You have the potential. You can kind of do whatever you want. You could make like a trilogy of games in between Origins and Asylum, but you still have to function within Origins and right. You have to lead to Asylum. You can't go freaking. You can't make up your own universe separate to it. In fact, here's an idea. If you want to make up your own universe, then go do that. Honestly, you got to give Gotham Knights almost credit like that. They wanted to do it, and while it was very similar to the ending of Arkham Knight, and again they could have just done that, they wanted to literally just make a brand new thing, okay? And they did it. They literally did that. So to me, I guess, and the more I talk about it, the more I actually really like it. You have Roger Craig Smith, you have returning characters you can bring back. You have that nostalgia, and again, almost like that bait, but it's a good kind of bait because again, like there's potential there, but you can't go too wild, right? There is like a limit to it, and I guess there's like Batman Beyond is one that I would throw in. The tough thing about like, okay, so anything with like older or like post Night, right? Really, I guess what I'm trying to say is you have before Asylum, after Night. Now you have Suicide Squad there that really messes things up, so you'd have to kind of figure that out. And you have those two like polar opposites, right? You have kind of the Origins, the younger Batman, and then after an Arkham Knight type thing, okay? You could do that. My only other idea or suggestion for them would to be continuing to like create these just other worlds that you would want to do, right? Something like a Gotham Knights, but you would play as Batman. And again, the thing is, do you need to play as Batman in every single game? If you have 6 Batman games over the next 10 years, do you have to play as him in all of them, or do you even need all of them? The answer is probably no, and I think that's probably overkill, but at the same time, if that's their strategy, I guess we kind of have to help them out, the strategy. So that's kind of my thoughts generally. I think the like limitations and also kind of limitless potential of in between Origins and Asylum actually makes the most sense. You could go afterwards. I feel like that's more risky. You have to also like worry about the Kevin Conroy kind of angle to it. And then besides that, you could just literally do your own stuff. I was trying to think because I saw jokes of like a kart racer and stuff like, in terms of different genres, I wanted to think like MMO because I was trying to go, okay, well, like live service because you got gotta always freaking throw that in with these people. But yet again, like Suicide Squad just tried that. It didn't really work. In fact, actually, no, didn't. Not that it didn't really work. It didn't work at all. Let me correct myself there. But it's like, okay, well, these different genres, like, they did VR, right? It's like, what else? You could go through, like, there's horror, there's fighting games, there's things like that. There's not too much. I guess the only thing they could probably try, honestly, you could do like a Matt Reeves Batman type thing. I'm not saying like, continuing that with games, but the idea of, and I mean, different Arkham games have tried it in different ways, really doing this almost 50-50 split between detective and then Batman. And I, obviously, like, that's kind of the angle of the movie and maybe even the next two movies. But I think that's an interesting one because you can make it a crime story. You can make it like a detective story and then have combat elements added on, right? So you can kind of go that angle and lean really hard into walking around and almost like decision, making, right? Like choice making, choosing dialogue and stuff. It would get weird. It would get like, maybe not even weird because we've had games like that, I'm sure, but it would be very different to like the Arkham verse, kind of games that we've gotten. And I think that's, in terms of almost wrapping up this conversation here, the thing that's interesting is like they can go off in those angles. And I think actually, thinking about it in my head a little bit, I really actually think that could be like a clever one, just a different way of doing it. But yet again, while those angles do exist, then you have to think about, okay, but like they want to do DC, but they really want to stick to Batman. So they're already willing to like limit themselves, right? All right, well, what's like the next part of like limiting the scope? Doing something that's too detective-y and not enough fighting, they might say, no, that's not it. Even the timeline stuff, right? They might say, okay, no more separating, even though, like, ironically, Gotham Knights, I believe, did better than Suicide Squad, right? Like sales, etc. So funny enough, the game that actually made its own universe did better than the one sticking in the Arkhamverse. I wonder if they look at it and say, okay, we kind of have to make a decision, right? No more games in the Arkhamverse, or games that are only out, like one or the other. We're going to stick to it, or we're only going to do games outside of it. Or maybe they do a mix-up, right? Because I guess technically they've shown they're willing to do that. You have Gotham Knights, you have Suicide Squad, now you have Arkham Shadows, and it actually is literally flip-flopped each time, right? So it seems like they are willing. I just wonder, again, with them like establishing this pillar, right? Like this is the future of WB games. What are their limits? What are they willing to kind of reach out for? So that's my thoughts. You let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.